Okay, now we move on to the next section. I told you the first two sections would be fairly lengthy because they are the most important, but that's not to say these aren't important either. Developing an engaging style, engaging with your reader. This is important, and some of this is going to look familiar. A lot of it is what I've been emphasizing for the past several weeks, especially use specific descriptive verbs. Use specific precise modifiers that help the reader see, hear, or feel what you are describing. Emphasize people whenever possible. Vary your sentence style. Avoid overuse of any one kind of construction in the same sentence, and don't change your point of view between or within sentences. So we'll see examples of that coming up. Okay, so here we have some examples of poor use of descriptive verbs and good use of descriptive verbs. Okay, his fist broke the window into many little pieces. Well, there's a verb for that. It's called shattered. Notice the difference in the two sentences. His fist shattered the window. The second one is much more effective because it's shorter. All the words are doing the work. The same thing with our next example. The exhausted runner went up the last hill in an unsteady way. The problem here, of course, is the use of went, which is a very weak verb. It doesn't really communicate a specific action or a descriptive action. Rather, the word staggered does communicate that. So the exhausted runner staggered up the last hill. You don't have to say went in an unsteady way. We already have a word that communicates that. And then finally, at first the players and managers had an argument over the money, but finally they came to an agreement that got the contract settled. Very wordy. It can be handled very easily by taking argument and agreement and turning them into verbs. At first the players and managers argued over the money, but finally they settled the contract dispute. Okay, so the verb is the heart of the sentence. You want your verbs to be specific. You want them to be descriptive. You want them to do the beating of the sentence. In the same way you want to use descriptive verbs, you also want to use descriptive and specific modifiers because they allow the reader to see, hear, and feel what you are describing. So let's look at the first example here. The potion changed the scientist into a really old man. That's not very descriptive, okay? The potion changed the scientist into a 100-year-old man is very precise. That's what you want to be focusing on. Araceli is a really interesting person. Interesting doesn't really communicate very much. Araceli is witty, intelligent, and talented. That gives you the specific adjectives that explain why he's interesting in the first place. And finally, the vegetables tasted funny. Funny is, again, one of those vague words you want to avoid. The vegetables tasted like moss mixed with crazy glue. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever eaten moss mixed with crazy glue before, but it certainly is a more vivid description than just saying it tastes funny. So please choose your words with care. Whenever possible, you want to emphasize people. It saves you from a lot of problems. And this example here is, well, there's a lot of problems. And you can see it comes from Brown University's course announcement. And Brown University, hey, that's an Ivy League school. That's up there with Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, etc. Yet that does not mean that people who work there know how to write well. So look at the example here. Tuition regulations currently in effect provide that payment of the annual tuition entitles an undergraduate degree candidate to full-time enrollment, which is defined as registration for 3, 4, or 5 courses per semester. This means that at no time may an undergraduate student's official registration for courses drop below 3 without a dean's permission for part-time status, and that at no time may the official course registration exceed 5. Well, the problem here is that what the writer should be writing about is the student. He's the person involved here. She's the person involved here. And because the writer does not make students the subject of any of those sentences, the writer is forced to contort his or her writing in order to communicate what he or she is trying to do. So, the revised version, look how more clearly it is, and look how shorter it is. If students pay their tuition, they may enroll in 3, 4, or 5 classes per semester. Fewer than 3 or more than 5 can be taken only with the dean's permission. That's it. That's all that all of those words are trying to say, and they don't even say them successfully. Again, be direct. Now, you also want to try, and this is something maybe a little further down the road, but it is something that does affect the way people read your writing. You want to vary your sentence style. The example I have here, notice, is very simple. It's all simple sentences: subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb. Soccer is the most popular sport in the world. Soccer exists in almost every country. Soccer players are sometimes more famous than movie stars. Soccer teams compete every few years for the World Soccer Cup. Soccer fans often riot if their teams lose. Soccer fans even commit suicide. Soccer is the only game in the world that makes people so crazy. That sounds, again, choppy and juvenile, as I say down here in the red. The repetition of the simple sentence structure is not effective. Now, what you can do, of course, is to combine sentences using conjunctions, either coordinating or subordinating. Okay, but you don't want to write like this. It sounds like Go Dog Go, if you ever read that book when you were a child. All right, and the final tip to developing an engaging style is don't change your point of view between or within sentences. So let's take a look, right? Students pay tuition, which entitle them to some voice in the university's administration. Therefore, we deserve one student on the Board of Regents. Okay, well, is the writer talking about the students as separate from himself, or is the writer talking about himself as one of the students? Well, it's unclear. That is a shift in point of view. You need to keep point of view consistent. Students pay tuition, which should entitle them to some voice in the university's administration. Therefore, they deserve one student on the Board of Regents. It's fairly simple, but you don't want to mix these up. It could work either way. You could go with us, which should entitle us to some voice. It doesn't really matter so much as, choosing a consistent point of view. The second one is a particularly egregious problem here. I like my photography class because we learn how to restore our old photos and how to take better color portraits of your family. Terribly confusing, not very well written at all. Perspective is everything. If you're writing about yourself, keep it in first person. If you are writing about, let's say, writing about yourself, keep it singular first person. If you're writing about the class, keep it in plural first person. If you're writing about you, which wouldn't make any sense here because I'm not taking this photography class, then you would use you. So the revision here focuses on singular first person. I like my photography class because I'm learning how to restore my old photos and how to take better color portraits of my family. This is a well-written sentence.